The sound of the heavy oak door closing was swallowed by the thick carpet of the West Wing study. Prince Adrian cornered his younger brother against a wall of leather-bound books, the scent of old paper and power filling the space. He noted that 5 years of war had left Julian leaner, his skin burnished by a relentless desert sun. A possessive hand traced the sharp line of Julian's jaw before descending to the flat plane of his stomach. His voice a low murmur about how much he had missed him. Julian's patience, worn thin by years of sand and blood, finally snapped. He caught Adrian's wrist, his grip like steel. He suggested with a chilling smile that if the crown prince felt an itch, his own fiancée was surely available. He reminded his brother of his own words from long ago, questioning if he didn't still prefer women. It was the year the long desert war had finally turned. The troops were coming home, but the president, their father, was gravely ill, and Adrian was acting in his stead. In the televised cabinet meeting earlier, Adrian had smiled warmly, promising Julian a hero's welcome and a handsome reward for his service. The moment the cameras were off, the charade had ended, and Julian found himself pinned against the wall. Adrian's hands roamed without permission over the faint scar tissue on Julian's chest, the hard muscles of his abdomen, his voice a hoarse whisper. He called him by his name, a sound full of a desperate, 5-year longing. Julian remained still, his gaze clinical as he studied the face of the man who had sent him away. He remembered kneeling for hours on the cold marble steps outside this very office, his forehead bruised and bleeding, only to be met with silence. It was Adrian who had cast him out, leaving him to the mercy of a brutal war. The trespassing hand moved lower, and Julian's eyes darkened. He tightened his grip on Adrian's wrist, him that he was crossing a line. He repeated his venomous suggestion about Adrian's fiancée, asking what kind of man toyed with his own brother this way. The easy smirk vanished from Adrian's face. He stared at Julian, asking if he hated him. Julian denied it, stating coldly that he felt nothing. He asserted that whatever bond they once shared had been ground to dust by time and distance. Pushing Adrian away, he created a gulf of several feet between them. He then delivered the killing blow, informing his brother that he had found someone else. He told Adrian that his desperate advances were repulsive. Adrian flinched as if struck. A faint redness crept into the corners of his eyes as he recalled a time when Julian had not found him repulsive at all. Julian scoffed at the mention of the past, dismissing it as a history best forgotten. He sneered that Adrian's brand of love was lethal, and he wanted no part of it. He spoke of Leo, the soldier who had saved his life multiple times, and how they had pledged themselves to one another under the vast desert sky. A strange, broken laugh escaped Adrian's lips. It started low and grew into a wild, unhinged sound. His eyes, now blazing, fixed on Julian. He revealed that Leo was one of his own elite security detail, sent specifically to protect Julian. He demanded to know how, precisely, they had pledged themselves to each other. Julian described nights spent sharing whiskey and rations by a campfire, sleeping side by side for warmth, his tone defiant. Something inside Adrian broke. He lunged forward, slamming Julian against the wall again, his fingers digging into the nape of his neck. His kiss was a brutal assault, acclaiming. He asked if Leo had ever touched him there, his lips brushing Julian's. His hand slid down to the sensitive skin at the apex of his thighs, a searing heat that made Julian tremble. He asked if Leo had touched him there, too. The force was absolute, a statement of ownership. Pressed against the warmth of his brother's chest, Julian sighed in defeat. He met Adrian's gaze and pleaded for him to let this go, for both their sakes. Adrian's answer was a simple, unyielding no. A surge of fury propelled Julian forward. He grabbed Adrian's head and bit down hard on his lip, drawing blood. It was Adrian who had spoiled him, Adrian who had discarded him, and Adrian who now refused to release him. He felt like an animal being toyed with. Not satisfied, he sank his teeth into the exposed column of Adrian's throat. Adrian leaned back against the desk, offering no resistance, his throat vulnerable as Julian tore at him. His voice was a ragged, painful rasp. He conceded that Julian had every right to hate him. Julian looked up, his face inches from the one that had haunted his dreams for half a decade. He confessed that he no longer hated him. After 10 years of this twisted dance, he was too tired for hate and too broken for love. He was not born a prince. He was a relic of the Great Collapse, a time when the nation had fractured and people starved. His father had sold his mother to a butcher for a handful of canned goods. His mother was pregnant, and his father had cheerfully suggested the butcher pay extra for the tender meat inside her. He was tied up like a dog nearby, watching his father devour a stale loaf of bread received in trade. The next day, his father was dead, and he was alone, a 10-year-old scavenger in a world of predators. He was eventually caught by a group of desperate men who saw him only as a meal. He woke up hanging upside down from a tree branch over a boiling pot. Through the haze of pain and fear, he saw a military convoy passing on the road. A young man on horseback, his face serene and kind, met his terrified gaze. It was Adrian. A single ration bar and a bottle of clean water had bought his life. Adrian took him back to the capital. At the time, the First Lady was lost in a deep depression after the death of her 6th child. When she saw the boy hiding behind Adrian, a boy who bore a faint resemblance to her lost son, she fell into a delusion. She pulled him into an embrace, calling him her child. Her touch was soft, and it reminded him of his own mother, of the butcher, of the boiling pot. He broke down, weeping uncontrollably in her arms. He became the president's ward, a living comfort object for a grieving woman. But her madness ebbed and flowed. On clear days, she would shove him away, demanding to know who he was, sometimes lashing out with whatever was at hand. In her fog, she would crush him to her chest, her love as suffocating as her hate. On those long, terrifying nights, he would sneak through the silent, shadowed halls of the residence to Adrian's room. He would ask, his voice trembling, if he could stay. Adrian never refused. He was a kind soul, the type to stop a convoy for a single starving child. 14-year-old Adrian would lift him into his bed with a fond smile, promising that he would always be there for him. And he was. He was there to dry Julian's tears after the First Lady's funeral. He was there to defend him when the other children of Washington's elite bloodlines called him gutter trash. And when Julian, consumed by jealousy at the news of Adrian's arranged engagement, climbed into his bed and tearfully begged him not to marry anyone else, Adrian had smiled and agreed. He had loved him, and in that love, he had allowed Julian to become reckless. But then the indulgence stopped. The pressure from their father and his cabinet grew immense. Memos piled up. The stability of the dynasty was at stake. During a tense meeting, Julian had spoken out, accusing the assembled senators and power brokers of using Adrian's marriage as a political bartering chip. The room had erupted in chaos. Their father, the president, slammed his fist on the table and adjourned the meeting, his eyes locking on Julian with a dark, unreadable expression. A storm broke over the city as Julian waited for Adrian outside the Oval Office. When Adrian emerged, he looked exhausted. Julian reached for him, but Adrian recoiled as if burned. His voice was ice. He addressed Julian by his official title and demanded to know why he wasn't showing proper respect. Before Julian could process the shift, an aide kicked the back of his knee, forcing him to the ground. Adrian looked down at him, all warmth gone, and spoke of how he had been wrong to spoil his younger brother, allowing him to grow arrogant enough to speak out of turn. He then wiped his hands with a handkerchief, as if touching Julian had soiled him, and issued a decree that Julian was barred from his presence. But Julian was stubborn. Day after day, he knelt outside Adrian's office, begging for a single moment of his time. He couldn't imagine a life without him. Adrian was the only source of warmth in his cold, gilded world. He was the one who held him, who kissed him, whose whispered endearments had been his only solace. Finally, Adrian appeared, a shadow blocking the light. He looked down at Julian's tear-streaked face and laughed, a hollow, cruel sound. He announced his engagement, dismissing their past as childish games. He told Julian he now understood the value of a woman, and that it was time for him to move on. A young woman in a pink dress emerged from the office, draping a coat over Adrian's shoulders and taking his arm. Adrian smiled at her, remarking that he had been delayed by an unimportant matter. They walked away together, leaving Julian kneeling in the rain, his heart shattering. The Desert War began a year later. Insurgents had taken a dozen cities. American forces were in retreat. At a National Security Council meeting, Adrian proposed sending Julian to the front lines. He argued that the presence of a member of the first family would boost morale and demonstrate their commitment. His gaze met Julian's across the long table, the pressure of it suffocating. Julian felt a bitter irony. He had once told Adrian that he held his life in his hands. Now Adrian was asking for it. He knelt and accepted the commission, vowing to see the war through to its end. On the day he left, crowds lined the streets, throwing flowers. He scanned the official viewing stands, searching for one familiar face, but Adrian was not there. He didn't even come to see him off. The wind on the airfield runway was fierce, stinging his eyes until tears flowed. The desert was a brutal teacher. The wind never stopped. He became a demon on the battlefield, charging headfirst into every fight, seeing Adrian's face in every enemy soldier he cut down. He was wounded many times, the scars a map of his 5 years in hell. During the worst of it, after an ambush left him disemboweled, his guard Leo dragged him from a pile of bodies and raced back to base. As he lay bleeding out on the back of a speeding Humvee, he felt Leo's tears fall on his face. He developed a fever, the infection pulling him toward death. The medic gave him up for lost. In his delirium, he saw Adrian's face, hovering just above his own. Filled with a sudden, feverish rage, he bit his brother's cheek, drawing blood. Adrian didn't pull away. He simply stroked Julian's face, his eyes filled with a familiar, long-lost tenderness. The dam inside Julian broke. He sobbed, crying out that Adrian had never once come to him in his dreams, asking why he had been abandoned, telling him how cold the desert was, how he was so scared, how Adrian's arms were the only warm place he had ever known. He begged for forgiveness, promising to change, pleading not to be left alone again. He fell asleep in what felt like a warm embrace. When he awoke, Leo was asleep in a chair beside his bed. He asked if anyone else had been in the medical tent last night. Leo, his eyes still swollen from crying, said no. He had been the only one there. A coldness settled in Julian's heart. It was better that he hadn't come. If he had, Julian thought, he might have torn him apart with his bare hands. In 5 years, he had risen through the ranks, earning a reputation and the loyalty of his men. He and Leo had saved each other's lives more times than they could count. They were brothers in arms, forged in the fire of the desert. Now he was back, a celebrated general, no longer the broken boy who had been cast out. And when Leo burst into Adrian's study to find them locked in a violent, desperate struggle on the floor, the young soldier's face went pale with shock. Adrian, unperturbed, rose to his feet, a smug look on his face. He taunted Leo, asking if he really thought his general was in any danger. Julian, disgusted, pulled his uniform straight and stormed out, dragging a stunned Leo with him. Back in his own quarters, Leo finally broke down, grabbing Julian's hand and pressing it to his wet cheek. He reminded Julian of his promise never to forgive the crown prince. He cried like a lost puppy, this fearsome warrior who had charged enemy lines without flinching. Julian knelt, gently wiping the tears away, his heart aching. He explained that Adrian was the future of the nation, and he could not be tainted by scandal. Their relationship had no future. The long nights in the desert had given him time to think. He understood now the impossible choice Adrian had faced. Their father had discovered their secret and had wanted Julian gone, perhaps even dead. Adrian had chosen the only path he could to save Julian's life, to make Julian hate him, to drive him so far away that their father's reach could not extend. He knew the near-fatal ambush had not been the work of the enemy. The attack had come from behind, from his own side. The wind in the desert eventually dies down. So had his hatred. He didn't hate Adrian anymore, but he couldn't love him either. The nation needed its perfect prince, its savior. Adrian belonged to the people, not to him. An aide entered with a summons. The crown prince requested his presence in the West Wing. As Julian prepared to leave, Leo blocked his path, kneeling and grabbing his wrist. He begged him not to go, his eyes full of fear, saying it was obvious what the prince wanted. Julian tried to reassure him, but Leo pressed closer, his lips brushing Julian's palm, confessing in a nervous rush that he had loved him for a long time. Before Julian could respond, the aide announced Adrian's arrival. The crown prince stood in the doorway, his face unreadable as he took in the scene. Leo kneeling between Julian's legs, his face buried in his lap. A dangerous stillness fell over the room. Adrian's voice was deceptively calm as he apologized for interrupting. He advanced on them, his whisper a venomous hiss in Julian's ear, asking if he wanted to make things more exciting. He pinned Leo to the floor with his knee, grabbed Julian's face, and kissed him with a brutal, punishing hunger, stealing the air from his lungs. When he finally pulled back, he looked down at Julian and asked which of them made him feel better, Adrian or his little soldier. He dragged Julian from the room and across the manicured lawns of the residence, all the way to the private royal apartments. Julian tried to pull away, hissing that Adrian was insane, but his brother's grip was unbreakable. He told Julian that if he caused a scene, he would finish things right there on the lawn for all the staff to see. Julian fell silent. Adrian pulled him into the palatial suite he shared with his supposed wife. The thought of it made Julian's skin crawl. To be brought here to this place was the ultimate humiliation. He had once torn up the portraits of potential brides sent for Adrian's consideration, proclaiming that there was no room for a third person in their bed. Now, years of war had beaten that arrogance out of him. He stopped at the threshold, telling Adrian he would wait in the study and to pass his regards to his sister-in-law. Adrian laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. He repeated the word sister-in-law as if it were a foreign concept, then yanked Julian inside, saying it was past time he met the family. Julian struggled, shouting at him, calling him a sick man for parading his lover in front of his wife. The suite was just as he remembered it, but it was cold, empty, and silent. There was no sign of a woman's touch. Adrian pulled him in front of a large, ornate mirror, holding him from behind. He whispered in Julian's ear, asking if he could see his crown princess. Julian looked around, confused. Adrian turned his face toward the mirror. "Look closer," he said. "Say hello to your sister-in-law." In the mirror, their two bodies were intertwined. Julian's blood ran cold. He had never married. He turned, staring into Adrian's dark, bottomless eyes. His own reflection was drowning in them. Adrian tilted his chin up and kissed him. A deep, desperate kiss that was 5 years of repressed agony and longing unleashed. It was a kiss that demanded possession, that sought to merge their very souls. Julian trembled and pushed him away, stumbling backward. This was wrong. Adrian was supposed to be married, to be moving on, to be walking the bright path their father had paved for him. Adrian came after him, his arms wrapping around him in an unbreakable hold. He buried his face in Julian's neck, and Julian felt the hot sting of tears on his skin. He begged Julian not to leave him again. He confessed everything. How their father had threatened to kill Julian. How he had begged for 2 hours on his knees for his life. How sending him to the desert was the only way to keep him safe. He spoke of the sleepless nights, the constant fear. He admitted to sneaking to the front lines once, disguised just to see him. And what he saw, the brother he had cherished and protected, lying bloody and near death in a cold tent, had broken him. He had returned and cut himself with a knife, trying to understand the depth of Julian's wounds, but he couldn't. He choked on a sob, whispering how much it must have hurt, how he regretted his own weakness, his inability to stand up to their father. His trembling hand touched Julian's face. Julian, numb, reached under Adrian's shirt. His cold fingers found the crisscrossing network of faded scars on his brother's stomach. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Adrian continued his confession, his voice a torrent of pain. He described the constant pressure to marry, how their father had once drugged him and forced a woman into his rooms. He had tied her up and spent the night biting his own wrist until it bled. The pain the only thing keeping him from betraying Julian. He'd had a violent confrontation with their father, shattering a mirror and holding a shard to his own throat, telling the president he had been mad since the day he sent Julian away. He looked at Julian now, his gaze soft and full of relief. He whispered that their father was old and weak now, sustained by medicine, no longer a threat. As acting president, he had forbidden any more talk of marriage. He promised Julian that he could protect him now, that no one would ever stand between them again. They stared at each other, two souls reflected in the dark abyss of the other's eyes. Julian slowly reached up and wiped a tear from Adrian's cheek. He reminded his brother that he was not just his brother. He was the crown prince, the future of a nation of 300 million people. This love, their love, was a catastrophic mistake. To continue down this path would lead only to ruin. He punched Adrian in the stomach, a clean, hard blow that sent him sprawling to the floor. Looking down at his brother, he said with undisguised disappointment that Adrian, of all people, should know better. How dare he harm himself? How dare he rejoice in their father's illness? How dare he threaten the Senate? His reputation, the bedrock of his power, would be destroyed. He was meant to be a great leader, to marry a woman from a powerful family, to have the support of the establishment, to save their country from the brink. History was meant to remember him as a statesman, not as a debauched tyrant who ruled by fear and perversion. Adrian lay on the floor, his eyes red, a terrifyingly calm smile on his face. He said that without Julian, the throne, the power, the reputation, it was all meaningless. He accused Julian of being just like their father, trying to force him into a mold, to live a life dictated by rules and expectations for the sake of a hollow legacy. Julian knelt, grabbing his face. The man looking back at him was not the composed prince he had always known. This was a madman, willing to gamble an entire nation for the sake of his heart. And Julian, he realized, was just as mad, for the love he had tried to bury was now a wildfire consuming him. He wanted to hold him, to kiss him, to fall with him, but he couldn't. He drew back his hand and slapped Adrian across the face. He pulled him to his feet, his voice a low, vicious snarl. He told Adrian that he had been insulated by privilege for too long. He needed to see the real world, the suffering of the people, the fields of bodies. He told him that the 17-year-old boy he once was believed love could conquer all. But the desert had shown him the truth. He had seen husbands sell their wives for food, seen children whose families had been slaughtered take up arms, their eyes hollow with hate. He looked Adrian in the eye and told him that the moment he was sent to that desert, the boy Adrian loved had died forever. His voice softened into something close to a plea. He laid out the political reality. If they were together, the cabinet would see Adrian as morally compromised and unfit to rule. Without a strategic marriage, the powerful families would withhold their support. The people, fed lies and rumors, would turn against him. The nation, already fragile, would shatter. This was the price of their love. He was using Adrian's own patriotism, his own compassion, as a weapon against him. The light in Adrian's eyes died. A suffocating sadness filled the room. The end had been written from the very beginning. His gaze was a silent, agonizing question. Why? Julian leaned against the wall and began to laugh, a broken, hysterical sound. He laughed because they were born in a cage, laden with chains they could never break. He laughed because they had been young and foolish enough to believe their love could ever be enough. As night fell, he memorized the lines of Adrian's face in the moonlight, branding the image into his soul. This would be the last time. He knelt on the floor, a formal, final gesture. He reported that intelligence showed a new, dangerous instability in the western mountain region and requested that the crown prince allow him to lead the forces to contain it. Adrian's voice was flat, devoid of all emotion. What if I say no? Julian rose, his hand trembling. He did what Adrian had done to their father. He shattered a decorative vase and pressed a sharp shard against his own neck. A thin line of blood trickled down his finger. This was a tactic that only worked on someone who loved you. They both knew it. He met Adrian's crimson gaze and pressed the shard deeper. He gave him the choice. Let him go to war or let him die here. He was a soldier. His life belonged on the battlefield, not in a palace. Adrian let out a great, booming laugh that sounded like a sob. My brother, he said, his voice thick with tears. He lunged forward, not to stop him, but to kiss him, pinning his wrist to the floor. The kiss was deep and violent and final. When he pulled away, he whispered, "Go. Do whatever it is you must do." He added one last thing, his voice barely audible. "Leave me here, in this gilded cage, to rule alone." The day he rode out of the capital, the setting sun bled across the sky. Leo rode beside him. He reined in his horse and looked back at the city skyline. Adrian did not come to see him off. He knew with absolute certainty that they would never meet again. Adrian would sit on his throne, worshipped by his people, and he would fight on a distant battlefield, surrounded by fire and steel. It was the only way to protect the kingdom and the king.